A warm welcome to everyone joining another Wildlife SOS webinar today. We are very thrilled about this session, considering that we will learn about the unique wildlife of Jammu and Kashmir. Today, we have also gathered to celebrate National Wildlife Day on September 4th, a day that focuses on bringing awareness to conserving wild flora and fauna. Hi, I'm Aaliya Mir, Project Manager and Education Officer for Wildlife SOS Jammu and Kashmir project. Apart from organizing education and awareness programs on wildlife conservation in Jammu and Kashmir, we also manage 2 rescue and rehabilitation centers for black and brown bears at Dachigam and Pahalgam. Wildlife SOS is a wildlife conservation organization based in India, dedicated to preserving and protecting rare and endangered wildlife in collaboration with the Government of India. Our session today will delve into learning about the fauna and a landscape which I am myself very familiar with. We have a very well-renowned guest with us to share his experience and insights on this topic today, Mr. Intesar Sohail, who has been working as the Wildlife Warden in Department of Wildlife Protection, Jammu and Kashmir, for past 23 years. A passionate birder, wildlife photographer, regional editor and reviewer of eBird, he has also co-authored 2 books, Threatened Birds of Jammu and Kashmir and Important Bird Areas of Jammu and Kashmir. He has published more than 25 scientific papers in various peer-reviewed journals. Mr. Intesar Sohail is also the recipient of 2014 Cyrus and Harper Collins Award of Wild and Endangered Photo Contest under Special Mention category. Thank you so much, sir, for taking the time to join us today to share your insights on such a compelling topic. All of us have gathered here to learn from you today.
Hi. Hello to everybody. Thank you, Wildlife SOS, for giving me an opportunity to talk about the wildlife of Jammu and Kashmir in general and Dachigam National Park in particular. So I think I'll start right away.
So we'll wait for a few more minutes, then we'll start.
Okay.
Just a minute. So till then, I would like to say that before we begin, I would like to specify that our session will be a 40-45 minute presentation by Mr. Intesar Sohail, sir, followed by a 15-minute question and answer session. The audience can write down their questions in the Q&A section rather than the chat box. As we go along, you can share your questions in the Q&A section. So with that, sir, the stage is all yours.
Thank you, Aaliya. So let me try to share my screen first. Hope it is visible.
Yes, sir.
So I'm here to talk about the faunal diversity of Dachigam National Park and what challenges as managers we face in managing the wildlife as well as the landscape of national park and its adjacent areas. First, I will just glance through the history and legacy of Dachigam National Park. Dachigam was a hunting reserve, or what we used to call it a ruck of Maharaja of the erstwhile princely state of Jammu and Kashmir. That ruck, it remained between 1910 and 1945. And it's one of the oldest notified wildlife areas of India, notified way back in 1945, that's prior to the independence. And then it was governed by the game laws of Maharaja, which were very strict. And I will tell about the game laws a little later. First, continuing with the legacy, Dachigam in Kashmiri means 10 villages. Da means 10 and Gram means village. So the name has been derived from the 10 villages which were inside what is now the Dachigam National Park. And those 10 villages were relocated by the then Maharaja. And it was the foresight of the Maharaja. It was the villages were not only relocated for the purpose that the better game be available for his hunting, but he had the foresight to conserve the landscape, which is a source of drinking water, safe drinking water to Srinagar city. And even today, about half of the Srinagar city gets its water, drinking water from the Dachigam catchment. And in 1982, the national park, the sanctuary, in fact, was upgraded into a national park. And presently, it's a category 2 national park under the IUCN grading. It is situated in the Srinagar district, the central district of Kashmir Valley, the capital district, and 21 kilometers northeast of Srinagar city center, the Lal Chowk, the nearest airport, again the Srinagar airport, and the nearest railway station, the Srinagar railway station. They are almost equidistant and very easily approachable from the Dachigam National Park. Area is 161 square kilometers, and the significance of Dachigam lies in the fact that it falls in the contiguous protected area landscape of Kashmir. We have a very rich protected area network in Kashmir, in whole J&K in fact. And Dachigam National Park is right here in the center, surrounded by a landscape of other protected areas, which includes 2 wildlife sanctuaries. The overall wildlife sanctuary on the east and the Tral Wildlife Sanctuary, which was notified recently, last year in fact, it's towards the south. And we have 4 or 5 conservation reserves all around the Dachigam National Park, acting as a buffer. The geology and land use of the national park is mountainous. The terrain is hilly. It falls in the greater Himalayan range of the Kashmir Himalayas. The other Himalayan range which runs parallel to this Himalayan range is the Pir Panjal mountain range, which separates the Kashmir Valley from the rest of India. And the landscape is marked with rocky cliffs, crystalline rocks formations, and it has an altitudinal range of ranging from 1,600 to 4,300 meters above sea level. The snow cover area, that's the glacier area, constitutes about 15% of the national park, and the area is dominated by the evergreen and semi-evergreen forests, which forms about 60% of the landscape. Grasslands and meadows, they form an important component, constituting about 20% of the whole area, and barren rocky cliffs are just 5%. The significance of the area lies in the fact that it harbors the last viable population of the Kashmir red deer, which is also called locally Hangul. And it also forms an important catchment, as I mentioned, of the Dal Lake and provides drinking water to a significant population of Srinagar city, even now. And as I earlier mentioned, it is in contiguity to the various protected areas of the Kashmir Valley. And in fact, is central to the whole protected area landscape. And another significance which has been added to it recently by a study, which revealed that the Asiatic black bear has the highest density in its entire distributed range in Dachigam National Park. As far as the vegetation is concerned, the champions and states have classified the Himalayan moist temperate type vegetation for this national park, and it can be further classified into 3 types of forests. We have the riverine forest from 1,600 to 2,300 meters above sea level, which is dominated by the horse chestnut, Aesculus indica, the blue pine, the parasiaceous, the hazel, witch hazel, which is in common parlance. We have the wild walnut, Juglans regia, and other understory, which include Indigofera, viburnum, schemia, etc. The coniferous forest lies between 2,200 and 3,300 meters above sea level, and it's dominated by blue pine. And we have Abies pindrore and spruce, the PCS smithsoniana, other tree species in the conifer zone. Alpine scrub and pastures lie above 3,400 meters. That is the highest tree level, which is dominated by the birch, Betula utilis, which grows highest among the trees. And the shrub cover includes juniper, and we have other trees, rhododendron, and again, viburnum is a shrub, and other species which dominate this alpine scrub. This is a view of the riverine forest. You can see the wild walnut trees in the background. This is conifer stand, mostly in the north face of the national park, and it's a very rich and dense conifer forest we have, dominated by blue pine. Then we have the alpine scrub, highest habitat, which is dominated. You can see the birch forest with meadows in the foreground. Rogers and Pawar, as far as the faunal diversity is concerned, Rogers and Pawar, in 1998, they have placed Kashmir Valley, whole Kashmir Valley, in the Himalayas in their classification. And Dachigam also falls in the Himalaya zone, and it's in the Northwest Himalaya province, which is 2A. The wild faunal diversity of Dachigam National Park is characterized by an assemblage of Indo-Chinese elements and North Palearctic elements, rather than true Oriental or Indian peninsular elements. We have musk deer, Kashmir musk deer, we have weasels, rather than we have other peninsular elements, which are absent, like we don't have the nilgai or the peafowl in Dachigam National Park. Endemism is again very prominent. Kashmir musk deer, Kashmir red deer, Hangul, and Kashmir flying squirrel. These are some of the endemic and restricted range species, which we'll discuss a little later. Around 330 species of mammals and 250 species of birds are found in the national park. So coming to the Hangul, which is the pride of Kashmir, as it's called, and pride of Dachigam National Park. It is the only representative of the red deer group in the subcontinent. It was designated as separate species in 2017. Earlier, it used to be a subspecies of the red deer, the European red deer, which was Cervus elephas, and it was designated as Cervus elephas hangul. Now it has been granted a separate species status, and its scientific name is Cervus hangulu. It's critically endangered. Earlier, it was least concern because it fell into the category of the European red deer, which is very common. So now it has been assigned a critically endangered status as per IUCN Red List. Again, in the appendices of the CITES, it's listed in Appendix 1, and it also falls in the Schedule 1 of the Wildlife Protection Act. Here we have the population of the Hangul as census in the Dachigam National Park for the last 15 years. You can see that it has remained steady, although it is not as we would expect it to be. The habitat includes the mixed broadleaf coniferous forest and alpine meadows. It varies from season to season. And as I mentioned, present population is less than 250 individuals. And threats, which we will also discuss a bit later, include habitat fragmentation, poaching, livestock grazing in the upper areas, and genetic inbreeding, because it is restricted to a very small area. Since we are talking about Hangul, I would like to give a perspective of the conservation efforts we are putting in particular to Hangul. Uh, the past distribution of Hangul used to be in the form of a curve, an arc of 65 miles, which ran parallel to Jammu from north to east and up to the lower Chenab rivers, up to Ramnagar in Jammu. And in fact, it extended to the Chamba district of Himachal Pradesh, which is where you'll see a beach sanctuary in Himachal Pradesh. It was the only place outside JK that held Hangul populations in the past, and it no longer has Hangul now. The present distribution, as you can see, is restricted to Dachigam National Park and some adjacent areas in Kashmir Valley, which include Bangat Conservation Reserve in the north, Kanmu in the east, in the west, and Tral in the south, overall in the east. So there are a few pockets in and around Dachigam National Park which support the last remaining individuals of this day. This is a map of showing the distribution of Hangul inside Dachigam. The red dots, they show the presence of Hangul sightings, which have been recorded over time. You can see that generally it is found in grassland, scrub, alpine pastures, and some blue pine areas. It depends upon the seasons. Hangul in Dachigam breeds. The breeding season commences with the rut, which starts in late September, which is about to start now. We are almost in the middle of September. It lasts till October, mid-October, the rutting, and gestation period is around 7 to 8 months. Only one young is born in May, June, and the females conceive in alternate years. They don't conceive annually. A particular female will give birth in alternate years. So that's why Hangul recruitment is an issue. We are putting in efforts for conservation breeding. And the conservation breeding of Hangul was associated because of the fact that it is the only surviving representative of the red deer, as I mentioned, in the entire subcontinent. It's endemic to Kashmir Valley now, not found anywhere else. Wild population has gone below 200 some years back, although it's around 250 right now. And it's the only viable population found in a single restricted area. And last but not the least, we don't have any animal in captivity anywhere in the world. So this is what has been associated the conservation breeding of the animal. The conservation breeding, I will discuss a little more because it's yet to take off, but efforts are afoot. We have selected a site in Shikarga, which lies 50 kilometers south of Dachigam. Shikarga is a part of now declared Tral Wildlife Sanctuary, which has its own small population of Hangul in the wild. And it has quite a lot of ecological affinity with Dachigam. The infrastructure-wise, the Conservation Breeding Center is all set to go. We have in place every safety measure which is required for housing the founder animals. We have 5.5 hectare area enclosed, fenced, 10 feet high chain link fencing. Above that, we have a power fence, and it's also supported by a concertina wire provided at the top, because we have had an accident in the paddock earlier when a wild leopard came in and preyed upon a Hangul fawn, which was kept in the facility. So we are taking no chances, and the measures are afoot to get the founder animals. Procuring the founder animals, they are to be procured from wild, And Dachigam National Park is again the source population, where from we think we can capture the few individuals, 6 to 8 individuals, for the to be founder animals for the conservation breeding. And this project is going on in collaboration with the SQUAST, Sher Kashmir University of Agriculture, Science and Technology, Kashmir, and the Wildlife Institute of India, which have been coordinating in capturing of the Hangul. Right now, we have the Hangul satellite collaring project going on under the auspices of SQUAST K and Wildlife Institute of India. And the satellite collaring started in 2013. The purpose is to first determine the actual home rate of the Hangul, including its habitat use, movement patterns around and in Dachigam National Park. And plus, additionally, we want to capture, as I mentioned, founder animals for the Hangul Conservation Breeding Center at Chicago. So far, the team has been able to capture and collar 5 individuals, including 2 males and 3 females. And we have got a good insight into the summer range and behavior of the animals. We know that the Hangul no longer prefers the upper Dachigam area, which earlier it used to, because of the fact that it is highly grazed, and there the Hangul faces a direct competition with the domestic livestock. And instead, the Hangul is going to other alternative areas in the Sindh Valley, which lies to the north of Dachigam. And its behavior has also changed a bit. We have the birthing sites where the Hangul gives birth to its young slightly at a lower altitude than it used to be earlier. Now, the next species is again an endemic species to the Kashmir Valley, the Kashmir musk deer. Again, it was designated as a species in 2005. Earlier, it used to be unspecific with the Himalayan musk deer. It is endangered as per IUCN categorization, listed in Appendix 1 of CITES and Schedule 1 of the Wildlife Protection Act. Musk deer in Dachigam, we assume is a good population of musk deer, but the population is unknown because we have not gone for any specific surveys as yet. But sporadic sightings are there, and indirect evidences also point to a very healthy population in Dachigam National Park. Habitat is broadleaf as well as conifer forest, based between 2,500 to 3,000 meters above sea level. And threats again include habitat fragmentation, poaching, and livestock grazing, as I mentioned in the upper Dachigam. One animal, the sarab, which earlier was very difficult to sight, for the last few years it has been sighted frequently, and we have some camera trap images also available now. It prefers the broad-leaved valleys and deep gorges around the Zabarwan hills inside Dachigam National Park. It is CITES Appendix 1 species, vulnerable as per IUCN categorization, and again a Schedule 1 species. Threats include habitat destruction and poaching. Himalayan brown bear is again an animal which is cited in Upper Dachigam. It is an Appendix 1 species, not vulnerable, not a globally threatened species, although, and it's again included in Schedule 1 of the Wildlife Protection Act. As I mentioned, it's found in Upper Dachigam. It prefers meadows above tree line. The threats specifically in Dachigam National Park are the dumping of garbage and solid waste, which the visitors, tourists usually dump. And we have seen for the last some years that the brown bear tends to scavenge on those remains, food remains left out by the tourists. Human-wildlife conflict is another issue, but brown bear is not so prominently involved in human-wildlife conflict as far as Kashmir is concerned. Black bear, as I mentioned, best place to sight black bear in its entire distributed range is Dachigam National Park, where the highest density as per studies. It prefers dense broadleaf and conifer forests, Schedule 2 species, Appendix 2 of CITES, and it is designated as a globally threatened species, being vulnerable under the IUCN. The threat includes the agricultural land use change, because we have seen that in Kashmir Valley particularly, the farmers are now going for last 10, 20 years, have gone for cash crops, including the fruits, rather than going for traditional crops like paddy. And wherever our forests and our orchards begin. So there is an interface between the forests and orchards, and it's here that the brown bear, black bear comes in contact with the humans, and it has proven to be the major problem animal as far as the human-wildlife conflict is concerned. The leopard, it's a vulnerable species listed in Appendix 1, and we have a good population in Dachigam National Park. It prefers broad-leaved and conifer forests, and in spite of having a good population, it is not that much pronounced in human-wildlife conflict around Dachigam National Park, rather than other areas, unprotected areas or territorial forest areas. The Kashmir grey langur, again, a restricted range endemic species to Kashmir Valley, listed in Appendix 1, endangered. Again, recently accorded the status in taxonomy as a separate species, prefers broadleaf and conifer forest. Threats include habitat loss, because we are fast losing the large trees where the animal would allow to hang on. So the species which the candidate species is the wolf, the grey wolf. We have cited both the Tibetan subspecies, Tibetan grey wolf, as well as the Himalayan grey wolf in the Dachigam National Park. This is a photograph of the Tibetan grey wolf, Tibetan wolf, and the habitat is open scrub and meadows. It tends to follow the nomadic graziers because it preys upon the livestock and tends to follow, it has been seen to follow the nomadic herders. Threat is loss of natural prey base and human-wildlife conflict, because it comes into contact with the nomadic herders. The other smaller species include the red fox, the jackal, yellow-throated marten, and the Siberian weasel. Plus the nocturnal leopard cat, rhesus, long-tailed marmot, which is quite common in the upper meadows, and the Indian wild pig. Here I wish to mention that the wild boar is not a native species of Dachigam National Park. It was introduced by the Maharaja for its game way back some 100 years ago. And in the Dachigam National Park, it reduced, its population got reduced due to natural causes. But over the last few years, it is again increasing in numbers, and we usually get the camera trap photographs all around the lower Dachigam area. Now, coming to the birds, we have around 250 species of birds. They include raptors, pheasants. Raptors, we have the golden eagle. We have 2-3 species of vultures, including the lammergeier. Pheasants, we have Poclass, Faunal, and melliforms like the trooper partridge and the Himalayan snowcock. We have the flycatchers, including the paradise flycatcher and the Kashmiri flycatcher endemic to Kashmir. We have thrushes, many species, accenters, finches, and buntings. And I would like to discuss a few species in a little detail because bird watchers, they are the target species of the bird watchers who come to the Dachigam National Park. The first and foremost is the Kashmir flycatcher. It's a globally threatened species under vulnerable category. It breeds in Dachigam. Uh, I have been regularly seeing nests of the Kashmir flycatcher in Dachigam. It migrates in winter down to the South India and to Sri Lanka. It prefers broad-leaved deciduous forest, and since it's a globally threatened species and it is quite sought after by the bird watchers, and people come to see this bird, particularly in summer season, because in winters it is very easy to sight this bird in Sri Lanka and in down south. But in summers, it has a rich plumage and it is very photogenic. So people come to see it in Dachigam National Park. Another endemic and restricted range species is the orange bullfinch, endemic to Western Himalayas. It's again a resident bird in Dachigam National Park, quite sought after by the bird watchers, bird lovers, prefers conifers and mixed forests. It shows an altitudinal migration. Uh, it comes down in winters to lower elevations, and in summers it goes up to higher elevations to breed. The Kashmir nuthatch, again an endemic species to western and central Himalayas. It is also found in Nepal Himalayas. Resident in Dachigam National Park, breeds here. Habitat is a well-wooded forest, conifer forest mainly, and it's also sought after by bird watchers. Another bird with Kashmir name attached to it, the Kashmir nutcracker. It's also called the large spotted nutcracker, endemic to Western Himalayas. Resident breeds in the Dachigam. It prefers conifer forests, and again a very sought after bird by the bird watchers. Another bird which we have been sighting regularly since last 7 or 8 years is the Tibetan blackbird. It's a resident bird in Dachigam National Park. It has a restricted range in the Himalayas, although it's not easily sighted in central and eastern Himalayas. But in Dachigam, Upper Dachigam National Park, since it breeds in Upper Dachigam National Park in the juniper slopes, it's quite easily sighted in the right season, which is summers. The chestnut-eared bunting, again a rare bird, quite sought after by the bird watchers. Is again a restricted range species found in Himalayas. It is summer visitor to Dachigam National Park and breeds in the grasslands, prefers dry, rocky, and bushy hills. And now coming to the challenge we face in Dachigam National Park. The first and foremost, as for every wildlife manager, is the protection and surveillance. This is the major activity which we do, which our staff does throughout the year. And we are constrained because we have only 32 people in Dachigam National Park, manning a 161 square kilometer area. And that too in harsh weather conditions in winter. And that when this apprehension of poaching is most. We have regular patrolling areas, patrolling beats, and the hotspots of poaching, they are identified. We have special anti-poaching squads. In winters, we establish camps at vulnerable points, and we have an information network in existing village. In fact, we have done a profiling of the licensed guns around the villages, village found around the national park, the registered weapons, and there is always a lookout for any apprehensive incident. The livestock grazing is another challenge which we are facing, as I earlier mentioned, in the Upper Dachigam National Park. The nomadic herders from the plains of Jammu come in summers. They arrive in late spring as the pass is open to graze in the in the green summer pastures of the entire Kashmir Valley. And Dachigam National Park is no exception. The Upper Dachigam is full of graziers. They come with their livestock, which include cattle, sheep, goat, and they pose a direct competition for the food to the Hangul. That's why, as I earlier mentioned, that Hangul no longer prefers the Upper Dachigam areas and has found alternate grounds elsewhere in the Sindh Valley. A glimpse of the grazing pressures in Dachigam National Park. The lower green areas of the lower and some mid areas of Dachigam National Park are where there's no grazing at all, but Upper Dachigam is heavily grazed. So this poses a direct threat to Hangul. And as I mentioned, the alternative summer grounds of Hangul. Hangul has found alternative summer grounds in Wangat area. The mitigative measures which we do include seasonal anti-grazing camps and checkposts. And the most important achievement which we were able to achieve in recent years was shifting of government on sheep breeding farm, excuse me, which was shifted from inside Dachigam National Park. It was located inside Dachigam National Park, a very old establishment. It was recently, government was able to relocate it outside Dachigam National Park, and it has given us a power, a sense of authority to check the private grazing in the Upper Dachigams also, which we hopefully will achieve in near future. Forest fires are another challenge which we face mainly in autumn and summers, harsh summers. We have grasslands which have coarse grasses which dry up in autumn season. They catch fire easily. There are man-made fires because of anthropogenic activities, and mostly grasslands are affected. And grasslands are an important habitat for Hangul. So this is a very crucial challenge which we are facing. Forest fires, we have mapped the fire-prone areas. We go for making of fire lines and improvement of earlier established fire lines. We also go for control burning to stop the fires. The capacity building and training of staff is also done regularly. Use of firefighting equipment is also done. And the important aspect, the awareness among fringe communities who actually start and trigger the fire inside the national park, it is also done on a regular basis. Last but not the least, the human-wildlife conflict. It is one of the greatest challenges faced by our frontline staff. And mainly, as far as Dachigam National Park and surrounds are concerned, the Asiatic black bear is the only problem animal. Although Kashmir grey lampoor to some extent does raid crops in the vicinity, but as far as human injury and human casualty is concerned, the black bear is the problem animal. And for the last 5 years, thankfully, leopard and brown bear have not been reported to be involved in the human-wildlife conflict in the areas around Dachigam National Park. This is the figure of the human-wildlife conflict incidents for the last 5 years, where a total of 14 human injuries and 1 unfortunate death on account of black bear attack. And we have rapid response teams in place which act as soon as they receive the information. We have state-of-the-art equipment, including tranquilizing equipment and physical and chemical restraint equipment, including tranquilizing guns, cages, transport cages. We regularly do capacity building of staff in tackling the human-wildlife conflict situations. And we have a fast-track compensation in place. We try to give exposure to the victims as soon as we can. And awareness programs are going on in a routine. And here I would mention the Wildlife SOS, Miss Aaliya Mir. She's very active in creating awareness, particularly with regard to the human-wildlife conflict in Dachigam and in whole landscape of the Kashmir Valley. Lastly, ecotourism, I have mentioned, included it in the challenge because Dachigam National Park is the most visited protected area in Jammu and Kashmir. It has a footfall of huge footfall of tourists in every season. All sorts of tourists, including nature lovers, adventurers who include trekkers and mountaineers, and also picnickers, the normal picnickers and excursionists. They come to Dachigam National Park, and mostly the footfall is in the lower Dachigam, where all sorts of tourists come. And one more challenge which we are faced with is that we have a VIP lodge right inside the national park, and which is managed by the Hospitality and Protocol Department, which caters to the VIP tourists. And this also poses a challenge for the wildlife managers. Ecotourism, we have facilities like eco-friendly carts, battery-operated carts, mountain cycles. We have trained eco guides, they are very good with bird watchers, and we have a very good nature interpretation center. Although we don't have a definitive period for park closure, but the present management plan, which has just been completed, it has recommendations to close the park, particularly in the rutting season of the Hangul, which will give some reprieve to the animal. And we are also going for the assessment of carrying capacity of the visitors, which is also an envisaged in the current management plan. As I mentioned, this is a preferred destination for VIPs, and we are taking it as a challenge, and hopefully the ecotourism plan, which goes with this present management plan, which will address to this issue also. Thank you very much.
Thank you for that insightful and meticulous presentation, sir. We have definitely taken something new from today's session. Personally, I have been working in Dachigam.
You're not audible. You're not properly audible.
Am I audible now, sir? Yes. So thank you for that insightful and meticulous presentation, sir. We have definitely taken something new from today's session. Personally, I have been working in Dachigam for some time now, but I tell you, I got such an enormous information about the national park as well as its diverse fauna today. The session was truly worthwhile, sir. Thank you so much. We can now begin with our Q&A session. I request my colleague Anisha to start the same. And if we are unable to answer your questions right now, we'll email you the answers. So please do write your email address with your questions. Over to Anisha now.
Thank you, ma'am. And thank you, sir, for that wonderful session. So we have some questions lined up for you. The first one is, could you please throw light on the categories of national parks in Jammu and Kashmir?
Categorization of national parks is, in fact, a global categorization. It is done by IUCN, and it depends upon various features of the particular national park. The status of the animals there, the status, the conservation status of the animals, and that in that sense, the Dachigam National Park has been accorded Grade 2 status.
Mm-hmm. Right. So, and the next question is, what are concertine wires?
Concertine wires are the razor wires, which are generally used by the paramilitary forces, security forces, to safeguard their installations. And it has been proven to be a very good deterrent for the wild predators. It is uh, coiled razor wire, which is installed atop the chain link fencing of to secure the paddock against predators.
Yes, sir. Another question we have is, could you tell us a little bit more about the poaching status in Dachigam?
Pardon?
This is a question about what is the poaching status in Dachigam?
Poaching status, yes. Poaching is largely controlled. As I mentioned, we have the identified villages around Dachigam National Park where we have registered all the arms, and we tend to monitor those, the movements of those armed persons. Plus, we have poaching watchtowers, poaching camps in place in the right season, in the vulnerable season, which is winter, when the snow falls higher in the mountains and the animals come down and are more vulnerable to poaching. And in last 5 or 6 years, we have had at least 3 cases of poaching, which includes one Hangul and one Serap. That's all.
Right, right. So the next question we have is, what is the penalty for people who are caught beating bears and leopards, since this has occurred in Jammu Kashmir in the past?
Yes, this is an unfortunate incident which happens in Kashmir as elsewhere. In retaliation, people tend to harm the animal, the problem animal. But of late, it has been controlled by awareness, which Aaliya can answer better than me, because we have seen that her programs across the landscape have proven to be very helpful in making the masses aware about the do's and don'ts to be followed in case of an eventuality. And I can tell you that we receive almost 4 to 5 calls per day regarding the presence of a bear or a leopard. But these retaliations, the violent retaliations, are hardly there. They're very minimal. Hardly we get in 6 months, we'll get one such incident where people react violently.
Right, sir. The next question we have for you is, what do you think is the approximate number of black bears and brown bears in the entire state of in Jammu and Kashmir?
I do not want to make a guess. I think there's a healthy population. There has not been a census, but there has been a study. The encounter rate in Dachigam is very good. But as far as numbers are concerned, I will not want to make a guess.
Okay. The next one is, besides human impact, are there any severe diseases that is threatening these species?
Yes, disease aspect I have not taken into account, but yes, disease is very much an apprehension, because we have these livestock herders going to upper Dachigam areas, and we have had a history of some disease transferring to wild animals from sheep, although they were in captivity some 20-25 years back. But till recently, we don't have any such outbreak.
Okay, okay. So this is another question from Dr. Salil Choksi, who was, I think, on a birding trip to Tarsar Marsar lakes around Srinagar. And
yes. Marsar Lake is within Dachigam National Park.
Okay, okay. And
what's his question?
Yeah, so their question was, their birding around Aru was great, but it was very disappointing to bird around Marsar Trek route. Is it due to human disturbance or the trek on the trek, or general paucity of birds in the trek
Uh,
route?
uh, uh, I don't know in which season he was there.
This was two
Oradu
weeks ago.
is
2 weeks ago.
Oradu is a very good birding destination. Uh, it is known for warblers and pheasants. But uh, higher you go, because Marsar Lake is an alpine lake. It's
Mhm,
found in alpine zone. There is naturally lesser number of birds are available there. The diversity is much less
mhm,
because of the height. But in some right seasons, like late autumn, which I would say just October, November, you
mhm,
tend to watch to sight some migratory
mhm,
birds, particularly accenters, which are in passage.
mhm.
And Tarsar is a good area for those.
Right, right. Another question we have is, what is the biggest threat to fauna of Dachigam National Park, or what can improve its conservation the most?
Biggest threat is grazing. I will
Grazing.
put
Mm-hmm.
grazing as the biggest threat because it occupies the upper Dachigam
Mm-hmm.
area, which is and come and direct and poses a direct competition, food competition to the ungulates.
Mm-hmm.
And as I mentioned, we have already been able to relocate the government sheep breeding farm,
Mm-hmm.
and hopefully we will be able to get the upper Dachigam also rid of these graziers.
Yes, looking forward to that. So the next
Mm.
one is, climate change effects have been felt all across the world. What challenges are the animals in particular facing in this regard in your region?
The challenge which I have mentioned, as elsewhere, the climate change is an issue. The glaciers we have in the Dachigam National Park are melting fast, and that also affects the availability of water
Mm-hmm.
for the animals and for the humans down. Plus, habitat fragmentation,
Mm-hmm.
which has also happened over past decades, and it's continuing. That's why
Mm-hmm.
we have been very particular in identifying the corridors which
Mm-hmm.
connect different patch of viable
Mm-hmm.
forests, so that the animals are given a corridor to move around
Mm-hmm.
and interact.
Right. I think we have another question here. Shopian district has been in the news several times for terrorism and militancy. Has this ever hampered wildlife conservation in any way?
You see the conflict. This is another conflict which we are having in Kashmir for last so many years,
Mm-hmm.
and a security problem is always a threat to the ecology, to the
Mm-hmm.
wildlife.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, this has brought the unprecedented presence of security forces inside forests everywhere in Kashmir,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and Dachigam is no exception. We have
Mm-hmm.
camps, security forces camps right inside Dachigam,
Mm-hmm.
and they are patrolled regularly. So
Mm-hmm.
there is some disturbance uh, which is caused to the animals also.
Right. So this is another question for Aaliya ma'am. Ma'am, recently Jammu and Kashmir region has its own rescue helpline. What are the kinds of species that you have rescued?
Yes.
Mm.
So, Nisha, we have been registered as one of the rescue helpline in our police department, which is
Mhm.
the control room, which handles all the rescue calls. You know, so we get all kinds of calls for bears as well as for leopards, for birds, and to reptiles as well.
Mhm.
Yes.
Um, so another question was for both of you actually, about any volunteering or job opportunities in conservation and surveillance in Jammu and Kashmir.
Alia
I
may
like
want to hire someone.
I would like Sir to answer this question. Although we are always for volunteers. we are always in need of the volunteers, because they are our, uh, helping hands to, do all the kind of awareness and education workshops to the rescue. So we are always in need of volunteers, and always welcome them.
Volunteers are also welcome in government departments, but we are not we are not in appointing authority. So
Exactly.
for
Yes, sir. This is another question for Aaliya ma'am. Have you noticed a change in people's perceptions towards wild animals ever since your awareness through as a wildlife SOS ambassador has been established?
Exactly, yes. Uh, I have been working since 15 years now in education and awareness, sector. So the change is quite visible. Although it's very, the whole process of education and awareness is very slow, because you have to change the attitude of the people. You have to change their behavior towards this, wildlife. So obviously it takes time, so it's a time consuming process, but definitely yes, we can see the change in the people, uh, and that change is evident from the number of rescue calls we get. Earlier we never used to get so many of calls, and nowadays we are, every day we get a huge number of rescue calls, and the people, I have seen that they wait for the department and for wildlife SOS staff to come and to rescue the animal, and that change is evident through all these.
Mm. Yes, ma'am. This is again another question for both of you. Has artificial intelligence ever been used in conservation in the regions that you work out of?
no, as far as I know,
Not yet.
artificial intelligence
Okay.
has not been.
Mm.
Absolutely.
Although we have used drones
Okay.
for rescues and other
Mhm.
activities.
Right. So in the future, hopefully.
Yeah, but since this Kashmir zone is politically very sensitive, so
Mhm.
drones are also, we have always have to take
Yes, sir.
permission from the
Okay.
departments, various
Okay.
departments.
So another question is, are there any reintroduction efforts made in Jammu and Kashmir or in Dachigam? If yes, what were the results and the reason for the same?
I will not call them reintroduction, but as I mentioned in my presentation, the wild boar is one species that was introduced by Maharaja
Yeah.
some
Mm.
100 years back, and the population is now again increasing. It
Mhm.
decreased in the for some time due to natural causes, but now it has started to increase again. So that's an introduction in the area.
Mhm.
As far as reintroduction is concerned, yes, we are thinking about reintroducing Hangul in its
Mhm.
erstwhile range, and for
Mhm.
that we have made this the conservation breeding center is in
Mhm.
place in Chikarga,
Mhm.
and that the objective is to replenish the population where it is already there, and to reintroduce it in the areas in its erstwhile range.
Right. I think with that, we're done with our questions for today. And if we've missed any more questions, we'll try to get back to them on email as well. Again, thank you, sir, for your wonderful presentation. Over to you, Aaliya ma'am.
Uh, just want to say, a big thank you to Mr. Intesar Sohail sir for this wonderful, session of question and answers. And I forgot to, mention it before. A big thank you for the personal, photographic from your personal album, which, have been used in the sir's presentation. So all the photographs were from sir's,
Mm.
personal album. So thank you for the beautiful photographs, sir.
Thank you. Always welcome.
Mhm.
Thank you. Sir, would you like to share a last message before we sign off?
Uh, my last message will be for people to come, particularly bird watchers, because I am a birder myself, to come to Kashmir, particularly Dachigam National Park. We have some fascinating bird life out here, and people have started to come. Birders have started to come, and security-wise, there's no issue at all. We'd love to host true nature lovers, and that's it.
Thank you so much, sir. To everyone listening, please do join us on our next webinar. To find out details of the next webinar, please do keep an eye on our social media. And to know more about Wildlife SOS, please visit our website, wildlifesos.org. And before signing off, I'd like to say this day is an opportunity for everyone to step back, take a deep breath, and think about all that nature has bestowed us with, and say thank you to the Creator. Thank you once again. Take care, and we urge everyone to stay safe. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Take care. Take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you, sir.